Chapter 1. When the Storm Brings Fate. The blizzard howls like a living creature, rattling the windows of Eliza's secluded cabin. Snow whips violently against the glass as she adds another log to the blazing fireplace. The forecast promised clear skies, yet another lie from this merciless year. She clutches a steaming mug of herbal tea in her hands, grateful for the solid walls her grandfather built in this remote corner of the mountains. Through the fury of the storm, a sound cuts through, distinct, deliberate, not wind, not settling timber. Eliza freezes, listening. The mountains know how to deceive a lonely mind. Wind becomes voices, tree branches scratch against glass, mimicking claws. After months of solitude, imagination fills the silence with ghosts. Yet she doesn't regret leaving her former life behind. Her fiancé, her career, the chaos of the city. Some call it a nervous breakdown. Eliza calls it survival. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She takes another sip, trying to convince herself it's just loneliness playing tricks. Then she hears a howl, or perhaps just the wind finding a new crack in the cabin to torment her. Eliza sets down her mug. Ripples disturb the dark liquid's surface. She holds her breath, listening completely still. After 30 seconds of silence except for the howling wind, she exhales with relief. Just as she thought, merely the storm playing on frayed nerves. But as she'll soon learn, she was wrong. Terribly wrong. Scratch. Another sound. Louder now. Undeniable. Followed by a sound that definitely doesn't belong to the wind. A low, drawn-out whine full of desperation. Eliza's heart pounds wildly as she slowly rises from the old rocking chair. The rifle hangs above the fireplace, her grandfather's last gift. She takes it, checks the safety, before approaching the window. Probably just a branch, she whispers, trying to convince herself. Or a raccoon, maybe a fox seeking shelter. But deep down she knows, foxes don't howl like that. Eliza, holding her breath, looks through the frost-covered glass. What she sees makes her heart stop, then beat with doubled force. Two wolves huddle against her door. Their luxurious fur is crusted with snow and ice. The smaller wolf lies collapsed on the wooden porch boards, blood staining the pristine, white surface in alarming crimson streaks. The larger wolf, with a massive body and silver-gray fur that gleams even through the ice, desperately paws at the door. His amber eyes, incredibly expressive, meet her gaze through the window. Eliza instinctively recoils. Every wilderness safety lecture she's ever attended flashes through her mind. Wild predators are not pets. Don't approach, don't engage. Never let your guard down. The silver wolf whines, a sound so mournful and human that it pierces something deep in Eliza's chest. He turns to his fallen companion, nudging the smaller wolf's muzzle with desperate tenderness, trying to rouse him. They'll find shelter elsewhere, Eliza tells herself, gripping the rifle tighter. They're wolves. They survive winter without human help. They're adapted for this. But the small wolf isn't moving now. His breathing is shallow, barely noticeable, growing weaker with each exhale. The temperature outside has dropped far below 20 below zero, a night that no injured creature would survive. The silver wolf looks back at Eliza. Something in his eyes makes her freeze in place. Not aggression. Not the empty, cold stare of a mindless predator. In those eyes, incredible intelligence. An almost human plea. Desperation impossible to misunderstand. He throws back his head and releases a howl, unlike any wolf howl Eliza has ever heard. The sound vibrates with pain, with purpose, with boundless grief. This is madness, she whispers, slowly lowering the rifle. These are wild animals. Apex predators. They could tear me apart. The small wolf shivers. His muzzle is covered in ice crystals that melt from his weak breath. Eliza's heart pounds wildly, echoing in her ears as she crosses the room. Each step toward the door feels like moving through thick water. The floorboards creak under her boots. One step, two, three. The logical part of her brain screams warnings, listing all possible outcomes. All the newspaper headlines about foolish people mauled by wild animals. Her fingers touch the cold metal of the latch. Cold penetrates her skin completely. She hesitates. Her hand trembles so badly she can barely grasp the mechanism. Through the door, she hears the large wolf's heavy breathing. She feels his presence just inches away, on the other side of the thin wooden barrier. No one helped me when I needed it. No one opened the door. Eliza takes a deep breath, filling her lungs with the scent of wood and pine. Her exhale creates a small cloud in the growing cold of the cabin air. The latch clicks under her fingers, a sound as loud as a gunshot in the quiet cabin. Brutal wind lashes her face as she opens the door inch by inch. The cold is so intense, it takes her breath away and sends needles of pain across her exposed skin. The silver wolf freezes, his amber eyes fixed on her, his massive body caught between flight and hope. A predator who could tear out her throat before she could raise a hand in defense. For one eternal moment, human and beast stare at each other across an ancient chasm of misunderstanding. Eliza steps aside, opening the door wider. Logical or not, she has made her choice. Chapter 2. The First Night. With the rifle half raised in trembling hands, Eliza steps onto the porch. The cold is unbearable, but adrenaline keeps her from feeling its full force. Because the moment her boot touches the wooden boards, both wolves freeze. The silver wolf's eyes don't leave her face. Assessing, studying. His breath creates small clouds of vapor in the icy air. The small wolf whimpers quietly, a sound so pitiful that Eliza's heart clenches with pain. "Just breathe and be," she whispers to herself. "Just breathe." Her grandfather always said that, and it became her personal mantra in difficult times. Of course, grandfather also said to always keep distance from wild animals, don't corner them, never approach predators. Yet here she stands, just feet away from apex predators, carrying only a rifle she doesn't want to use, and inexplicable, reckless compassion. She takes another cautious step forward. The injury on the smaller wolf proves worse than she initially thought. The snow beneath him has turned into a bloody slush, and Eliza sees raw metal embedded in torn flesh. Looks like a poacher's trap. Her stomach turns at the sight. "Don't move," she instructs the wolves, as if they understand English. "I'll help you. I promise." The silver wolf slightly tilts his head, as if actually listening. Such behavior is so uncharacteristic for a wild wolf that Eliza nearly retreats back into the house. Wild wolves don't obey humans. They don't seek help at cabin doors. They don't bring their wounded to human doorsteps. Slowly and deliberately, Eliza leans the rifle against the cabin wall, close enough to grab if necessary, but nevertheless a gesture of trust. She carefully returns inside, gathering warm blankets, her first aid kit, and the remains of savory venison stew from dinner. When she returns, the wolves haven't moved an inch. The silver wolf's eyes track her every movement, intelligent, alert, remarkably conscious. "I'll make you a shelter," she explains, still addressing them as if they understand everything. "Then I'll look at that leg. I promise to be careful." She spreads thick blankets in the corner of the covered porch, creating a windbreak from her neat stack of firewood. The silver wolf watches, his gaze frightening in its incredible intensity and focus. Eliza sets a deep bowl of stew next to the improvised shelter, then steps back, waiting for their reaction. The silver wolf looks at the food, then at Eliza, then at his wounded companion. The communication is so clear and definite that Eliza's breath catches. "Help my friend first," his eyes seem to say. "Help your friend first," she repeats aloud, pointing to the shelter. "The food will be there when you're ready." The silver wolf hesitates for just a moment, then carefully nudges his companion toward the blankets. The small wolf limps pitifully, leaving a bloody trail on the pristine surface. Eliza watches, mesmerized, as the large wolf, with incredible care and precision, guides the injured one into the improvised shelter. Once the small wolf settles on the soft blankets, the silver one returns and stands between Eliza and his companion, protecting. but showing no aggression. That trap needs to come off, Eliza says more to herself than to the wolf. Infection will set in if it hasn't already. The wind howls with renewed fierce force, driving snow horizontally across the porch. The temperature continues to drop relentlessly. Eliza knows without even looking at the old thermometer by the door that it's fallen far below 25 below. If they stay outside all night, the wolves might not survive until dawn. I need to help you, she tells the injured wolf, her voice sounding firmer than she feels inside. But I can't do it out here in the cold. We need warmth. Eliza cautiously takes a step forward, then another. The silver wolf doesn't growl, doesn't bare his formidable teeth. He simply waits, watching her every movement with remarkable calm. She kneels beside the smaller wolf, trying to telegraph each of her movements beforehand, so as not to frighten the injured animal. Up close, she sees that the injury is much worse than she feared. The trap has nearly completely severed the tendons. The paw is swollen to twice its normal size, taking on an unhealthy purple tinge. You need to come inside, she firmly tells them both. Both of you. It's warm there. There's light. I can help. The silver wolf's ears perk up alertly at her words, as if he truly understands every word. Eliza's entire body trembles, not just from the piercing cold. All survival instincts scream at her. Stop! Go inside alone! Let nature take its course! Wolves are not pets. Wolves are predators. Wolves have no place in human dwellings. It's an axiom that everyone knows. Yet these wolves came to her, chose her door among the vast wilderness. The storm is getting worse, she says, slowly rising to her feet. You'll die here if you stay outside. I can't allow that. As if understanding the gravity of the situation, the silver wolf looks at the sky, where snow swirls are becoming increasingly fierce, then looks back at Eliza. He gently nudges his companion with his muzzle, encouraging him to rise on trembling legs. Eliza steps back to the door, throwing it wide open. Warmth from the cabin rushes out, meeting the icy wind. Come on, she coaxes, trying to make her voice sound soothing. Please, trust me, as I'm trusting you. Several infinitely long moments pass with nothing happening. The silver wolf looks at her, his expression impossible to read. In his amber eyes, a whole storm of emotions. Then, with deliberate slowness, he helps the small wolf rise on unsteady legs and guides him toward the cabin entrance. At the threshold, the silver wolf freezes. His massive head is level with Eliza's waist. This close, she sees the true power of his muscles, the deadly sharpness of his fangs. One snap of jaws could sever an artery. One lunge could knock me down. A wild thought races through her head. What if I'm bringing death upon myself? The wolf raises his gaze, meeting her eyes. Something passes between them. A moment of deep connection that transcends the ancient chasm between human and wild predator. Something greater than words. Understanding. Trust. Hope. I must be completely out of my mind, Eliza whispers, feeling tears freeze on her cheeks. The wolf takes a decisive step forward, crossing the sacred threshold, and leads his wounded companion into the blessed warmth of the cabin. Eliza closes the massive door behind them, locking them all inside away from the raging blizzard. Then, looking at two majestic wild predators in her small living room, she swallows hard. What have I done? 0933, Chapter 3, Trust Through Fear. The wolves stand frozen in the middle of Eliza's living room like living statues. Water drips from their luxurious fur onto the polished wooden floor, forming small puddles that reflect the fireplace flames. The smaller wolf immediately collapses, too weak to stand any longer. His breathing is shallow, labored. The silver wolf still watches Eliza with his frighteningly intelligent amber eyes, in which something incredibly human glows. This makes her slowly retreat until her legs touch the old sofa. Her hand instinctively reaches for the rifle she left on the porch, finding only emptiness. Perfect, she whispers into the silence. Just perfect. I let wild predators into my home and left my only weapon outside in the cold. The cabin now feels incredibly cramped. Every exit to the door will pass by the wolves. She's trapped. The doors to the bathroom and bedroom are also locked from inside. If they attack, she might reach one of the rooms. Maybe. Eliza quickly weighs her options, heart pounding wildly in her chest. Just breathe and be, she mutters aloud, her mantra, trying to calm herself. Just breathe. The silver wolf sniffs the air, his nostrils flaring, catching the cabin's scents. Then slowly, with majestic grace, he lowers his massive body to the floor by the fireplace, laying his head on his outstretched front paws. This pose seems deliberately harmless, almost submissive, almost as if he's trying to calm her. Stop it, Eliza sharply scolds herself. They're not trying to communicate. These aren't sentient beings. They're wild animals acting on instinct. Yet watching him, Eliza can't tear her gaze from those incredible eyes. They track her every movement with such awareness that shouldn't exist in an animal mind. Wild wolves don't seek shelter from humans. They don't behave this way. Something completely unusual is happening here. Something that overturns everything she knows about nature. Eliza finds herself wondering, feeling scientific curiosity battle with fear. The injured wolf whimpers quietly, the pitiful sound drawing Eliza's attention to the dark blood, now slowly staining her beloved wool rug. You need food, she says, maintaining a calm, steady voice despite her wildly beating heart. And that damn trap needs to come off immediately, or infection will set in. Eliza, moving sideways along the wall, maintaining constant eye contact with the silver wolf, carefully heads to the kitchen. She takes out the remains of the aromatic stew and carefully transfers them into her large ceramic bowl. The silver wolf's ears instantly perk up at the enticing smell of game and spicy herbs. Here, she says, slowly setting the bowl on the floor, midway between them in neutral territory. Please eat. You need your strength. The silver wolf hesitates for a moment, shifting his penetrating gaze from Eliza to the food, then to his motionless companion. Some decision is made in a fraction of a second. Then, with measured, careful movements, he approaches the bowl. He sniffs once deeply, checking for safety, and begins eating with restrained elegance. After several methodical bites, he suddenly stops. He looks back at his injured companion and makes a quiet, low sound deep in his throat, something between a rumble and a call. The injured wolf weakly tries to rise on trembling legs but can't. Too weak. Too exhausted by pain and blood loss. The silver wolf immediately returns to his side, gently nudges the weakened companion's muzzle, then turns and looks at Eliza with an expression she can only interpret as desperate pleading. In his eyes, a whole world of unspoken words. Okay, all right, Eliza says, shocked that tears unexpectedly well up in her eyes at this display of care. Your friend first, I understand. She carefully brings the bowl closer to the injured wolf, who begins eating weakly, while the silver one stands guard nearby, his body a living shield between her and his vulnerable companion. The domestic intimacy of this scene seems nothing short of surreal. Wild predators in her living room, behaving almost like family. The cruel metal trap on the smaller wolf's paw gleams ominously in the warm firelight. A brutal reminder of human cruelty and indifference. And Eliza has experienced enough human cruelty to last a lifetime. She wouldn't be here, alone, far from everything she built for years in the bustling metropolis, if not for that night. The memory of the crowded train last winter surfaces in sharp, unwanted flashes. 3 men, their whispers turning into open threats, their hands grabbing her. A car full of passengers, each suddenly finding something extremely interesting on their phones. She escaped only by pulling the emergency brake in panic. But sometimes it seems part of her is still there, frozen in that nightmare, still screaming for help that will never come. The smaller wolf's pitiful whimper sharply returns her to the present. She needs to remove that trap. Now. Immediately. Eliza takes a decisive step forward, her knees slightly buckling. Just breathe and be, she whispers, meeting the small wolf's gaze, whose eyes are clouded with pain. I'll help you, I promise. Approaching an injured predator is madness. He might bite her from pain, instinctively defending himself. She could lose fingers, an arm, worse. And Eliza is afraid. Fear, ancient, primal, pulses in her veins. Sometimes fear prevents people from doing what's right. She knows this all too well. No one helped her that terrible night on the train. Fear, apathy, unwillingness to intervene, whatever you call it. The result is the same. I won't be that person, Eliza whispers firmly, resolutely gathering her battered first aid kit. Never. The silver wolf watches tensely as she slowly approaches, his whole body slightly tensing, ready for action. To defend or attack, she can't say for sure. Eliza kneels a few feet from the injured wolf, carefully displaying the tools in her trembling hands. Tweezers, bandages, antiseptic. I need to help your friend, she gently explains to the silver wolf, fully aware how insane it seems to talk to a wild animal. This trap is slowly killing her. If we don't remove it now, gangrene will set in. She'll die in agony. To her profound amazement, the silver wolf looks into her eyes understandingly for several long seconds. Then slightly, barely noticeably, shifts aside, freeing precious space for Eliza to reach the injured animal. Giving permission. Granting access. Impossible. This is simply impossible. Eliza works with extreme care, her voice sounding calm and soothing as she carefully examines the cruel trap. This is a devious device, specifically designed to keep prey alive, allowing poachers to collect still living animals for illegal trade. The small wolf whimpers painfully when Eliza carefully touches the cold metal, but remarkably doesn't growl or try to bite, just endures, trembling with pain. I'll be extremely careful, she promises in a shaking voice, bringing special cutters to the spring mechanism. It's going to hurt a lot. But then I promise it will get much better. First, she methodically cuts the spring mechanism, slowly releasing the deadly pressure on the shattered bones. The wolf cries out once piercingly, making such a heart-wrenching, almost human sound of pain that Eliza almost stops, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. But the silver wolf makes a low, vibrating rumble, a sound that somehow incomprehensibly soothes both Eliza herself and the injured animal. Comfort, support, a promise that everything will be okay. Working methodically, trying not to cause additional pain, she removes each sharp fragment of the cruel trap until only a deep, ugly wound remains, but free of metal. Eliza carefully cleans the damaged flesh with antiseptic, generously applies antibiotic ointment, and carefully bandages it with clean white gauze that quickly becomes soaked with scarlet blood. Throughout the painful procedure, the silver wolf doesn't take his mesmerizing amber eyes off her hands. Watching, assessing, memorizing each movement. That's all I can do for now, Eliza finally says, sinking back on her heels, feeling adrenaline slowly leaving her body. She needs rest, lots of water, and probably a real veterinarian who knows wolf anatomy. But this should help for a while. Eliza struggles to her feet, every muscle protesting from the strain. She adds several dry logs to the blazing fire, creating a powerful barrier of living heat between herself and the wolves. Beyond the frost-covered windows, the blizzard continues to rage furiously, shaking the ancient cabin walls with doubled force. Snow lashes against the glass like thousands of tiny ice bullets. Until the storm subsides, she wearily mutters, carefully settling into her favorite chair by the fireplace, pulling a warm blanket over herself. And then you two absolutely must return to where you truly belong, to the wilderness, to your pack. Despite her firm intention to stay awake all night, to remain alert and vigilant, Eliza's eyes betray her and grow heavy. Exhaustion rolls over her in waves. The last thing she sees before sinking into restless sleep is the silver wolf, protectively embracing his injured companion like a living blanket. Both pairs of amber eyes reflect the dancing golden flames of the fireplace. In their gaze, something greater than mere animal instinct, something that makes Eliza's heart beat slightly faster before sleep finally claims her. Chapter 4. The Impossible Healing. She dreams of nightmares. Men grab her with rough hands, mocking, their voices distorted echoes. The train car full of people, just standing and watching impassively. Their faces blurred, indifferent, inhuman. She screams, again and again, but there's no sound. When Eliza jerks awake before dawn, her heart pounding wildly, she's disoriented and freezing, despite the nearly extinguished fire in the fireplace. The first pale rays of winter dawn break through the frozen windows. For a moment, she thinks the entire incredible encounter, the wolves, the blizzard, the injured paw, the trap, was a dream, another product of her isolated, lonely mind. Then she slowly turns her head and sees them. The wolves keep a respectful distance at the far end of the spacious room, giving her space. The silver wolf is awake, sitting majestically upright, watching her with those same incredibly intelligent eyes. But what makes Eliza sharply hold her breath is the small wolf, because he's standing easily, completely freely on all four paws. No signs of yesterday's injury. No pain in his movements, no stiffness. The bloody bandages lie in a neat pile on the wooden floor, and beneath them, where just last evening there was a deep, traumatic wound with shattered bones and torn tendons, the small wolf's paw looks completely, absolutely intact. Not just healed, perfect, as if the injury never existed. This is impossible, Eliza whispers, slowly rising from the chair, ignoring the protesting creak in her back. No animal can heal that fast. Such wounds take weeks, months to heal. The wound went to the bone. I saw the shattered bones myself. She carefully approaches, kneeling before the smaller wolf. May I? She whispers, extending a trembling hand. The wolf, to her astonishment, obediently extends the healed paw. Eliza gently takes it in her palms, carefully examining it. The skin is flawless, the fur smooth, shiny. Not a scar, not the slightest sign of damage. Even the swelling has completely disappeared. But how? She mutters, raising her shocked gaze to the silver wolf. How is this possible? What are you? The small wolf carefully approaches her, stopping a few inches from her face. Then does something completely unexpected. Gently licks her cheek, a gesture of gratitude. Absolutely unambiguous. The silver wolf gracefully rises from his place and stands beside his companion. He looks Eliza straight in the eyes and slightly, almost ceremonially, bows his massive head. A bow, an expression of deep respect. A powerful shiver runs down Eliza's spine that has nothing to do with the cold. You're not ordinary wolves, she quietly says, her voice filled with reverent wonder. Are you? You're something else. Something much greater. She feels it with her entire being, ancient knowledge pulsing in her bones. The silver wolf continues to look at her with such depth of understanding that suddenly seems almost frightening in its humanity. And in this crystal clear moment of winter dawn, Eliza is absolutely, irrefutably certain. Whatever happens next, her life has just changed forever. Chapter 5. Days of Healing. The blizzard locks them together for 3 endless days and nights. By the morning of the second day, Eliza completely stops flinching whenever the wolves gracefully move around the cabin. They move with such care, such respect for her space, that fear slowly dissolves, giving way to something completely unexpected. Comfort, even joy. She finds herself talking to them constantly, while cooking breakfast, while working on photographs, explaining the composition of shots, complaining about the stubborn blizzard outside the window, even sharing deeply personal memories of her former life. Things she hadn't told anyone, not even her former fiancé. I used to be so confident, she tells the silver wolf, sitting on the floor sorting through her professional camera lenses. He lies by the crackling fire, ears alertly pointed in her direction, as if each word matters, as if he truly understands. I was chief photographer at a major magazine. I traveled all over the world. I had an apartment downtown with panoramic windows, friends, plans for the future. The wedding was scheduled for spring. Eliza falls silent, surprised that sharp pain still rises in her throat at these memories. And then one evening, I was standing in a crowded train, coming home from a work dinner, and these 3 men attacked me. Her voice becomes quieter, almost a whisper, and I realized that the world I thought was safe wasn't. The people I counted on, they'll just turn away when you need help most. She laughs quietly, bitterly, embarrassed by the sudden surge of emotion. Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. It's not like you can understand human problems and betrayals, but something in the wolf's intense, focused gaze makes her doubt that assumption. In his amber eyes, a depth that speaks of understanding pain, of knowing betrayal. Just breathe and be, she quietly whispers her mantra, running a trembling hand over the silver wolf's muzzle. He doesn't pull away. On the contrary, he leans into her touch with such tenderness that Eliza's breath catches. The small she-wolf, whom Eliza began calling Aurora because of her pale, almost bluish silver fur, reminiscent of the northern lights, spends most of her time sleeping, curled in an elegant ball in the sunny spot by the wide window. On her miraculously healed paw, there's absolutely no sign of yesterday's damage, a mystery that Eliza gradually stopped trying to rationally explain. Some things in this world simply defy scientific explanation. Magic exists. She's certain of it now. By the third day, they establish a surprisingly natural, almost domestic routine. Eliza prepares hearty breakfasts and dinners, methodically setting aside generous portions for the wolves in 2 large ceramic bowls. Silver, as she began calling the majestic silver wolf, seems to definitely prefer aromatic venison to ordinary chicken. He has refined taste. In the evenings, when the blizzard howls especially fiercely outside the windows, Eliza settles in the chair and reads aloud from her late grandfather's old, worn books, adventure novels, philosophical treatises, poetry collections. Silver invariably listens with such absolute, focused attention that seems completely impossible for a wild animal. Sometimes, looking up from the yellowed page, she catches his gaze on her, with such deeply human expression of understanding and something else, something warm and tender, something that makes her heart skip a beat. You know, she says on the third snowy night, closing the poetry book, I should be terrified of your presence here. 2 wild predators in my small cabin. It goes against all safety rules. Eliza looks at Silver, who lies at her feet, his massive head resting on her slippers. But instead, I feel less lonely than I have in the last long, agonizing months. Her voice trembles with unexpected emotion. For the first time since that night, I feel safe. Truly safe. Silver slowly, almost ceremonially, rises from his warm place by the fireplace and approaches her. He sits majestically beside her chair, his powerful body a living wall of protection. Eliza hesitantly extends her hand, hovering over his head, giving him the opportunity to pull away. He stands completely still, patiently awaiting her touch. When her fingers finally carefully touch his silky fur, it proves much softer and warmer than she imagined. Under her palm, she feels the measured, calm beating of his heart. I'm definitely insane, she quietly whispers, but continues to gently stroke his broad head, running her fingers through his thick silver mane. Completely, absolutely, hopelessly insane. But this madness feels right. Healing. That night they sleep unusually, Eliza on the sofa under a warm blanket, Silver on the floor beside her, close enough that she can hear his deep, steady breathing. Aurora cozily curls up at her feet, warm, trusting, surprisingly comfortable. For the first time in many months, Eliza sleeps without nightmares. Chapter 6. The Moment of Farewell. The dawn of the 4th day arrives with stunning, almost painful clarity. The storm finally subsided during the night, leaving behind a world completely transformed into a fairy tale realm of crystals and diamonds. Bright sunlight reflects off the snow-covered spruce branches, creating thousands of tiny prisms that paint the white cabin walls in rainbow dancing colors. Eliza opens the massive door to assess the scale of the Snow Kingdom, inhaling air so cold and crystalline that it burns her lungs with pleasant freshness. The world after the blizzard looks newborn, flawless. Silver and Aurora crowd in the doorway behind her, their bodies suddenly tensing with new, wild energy. The call of nature. The call of home. How incredibly beautiful, isn't it? She quietly says, carefully stepping barefoot onto the icy porch, shivering from the cold. As if the world was reborn. The wolves confidently pass by her, gracefully descending the snow-covered steps and stopping in drifts that reach almost to their chests. Aurora joyfully rushes forward, creating a fountain of sparkling white powder, then playfully stops to look back at her companion. In her movements, pure, genuine joy of returning to wilderness. Silver remains motionless at the edge of the clearing, intently watching Eliza with his mesmerizing amber eyes. The moment between them stretches out, heavy, meaningful, full of unspoken words. Eliza feels something painfully clench deep in her chest, sudden, unexpected, sharp grief of parting. "Time to go home," she says as firmly as possible, though her voice betrays her with a tremor. "Back to your pack, to your real family, to the life you're meant to live." Silver continues to stand motionless like a stone statue, doesn't intend to leave. His eyes look at her with the same incredible, piercing perceptiveness, the same deep connection that imperceptibly formed between them during their strange, magical confinement in the cabin. Aurora joyfully looks toward the dark forest with obvious, frank longing for freedom. She whimpers quietly, invitingly, making a sound of invitation, encouragement, a call to adventure. "Let's go. It's time. The forest awaits." "It's all right," Eliza says, her voice breaking mid-sentence. She makes a soothing gesture with her hand. "Go. Go home to your own. You're free. I'll be fine." Aurora decisively runs several meters to the very edge of the snow-covered forest, then stops, looking back expectantly and impatiently at Silver. After another infinitely long moment of agonizing hesitation, Silver slowly, as if by force, follows her. His powerful, majestic body methodically carves a wide path through the deep, untouched snow. At the very edge of the dark forest, he suddenly stops, turns his whole body. His piercing amber eyes find Eliza in the distance one last, long time, looking with such intensity that she feels this gaze physically, like a touch. In that gaze, a promise, an oath. "I'll return." Then, he gracefully turns and disappears after Aurora into the thick shadows of the ancient forest. His luxurious silver fur gradually merges with the play of light and shadow, until both wolves completely vanish from sight, as if they had never been there. Eliza stands on the icy porch for an incredibly long time, until her toes go numb from the cruel cold, staring intently at that place in the forest where they disappeared. Waiting, hoping, but they don't return. Chapter 7. The Emptiness. After the Miracle. 3. Infinitely long days have passed since the wolves went back into the forest, and the silence in the cabin presses on Eliza's ears like a physical, tangible pressure. She still constantly catches herself listening for the familiar click of claws on the wooden floor, still instinctively turns to share random observations with those who are no longer there. "Pathetic," she bitterly mutters to herself, methodically adjusting the complex parameters of her professional camera. She takes another shot of a bright red cardinal contrasting against the dazzling white snow. 3 days among wild animals, and suddenly you can't bear the loneliness. How pathetic. But it's the absolute undeniable truth. Undeniable. Before the wolves appeared, solitude was her carefully constructed refuge, a sacred sanctuary from endless human expectations and inevitable disappointments. Now it feels like a gaping void, the absence of something vital. She mechanically takes a photo, checks the result on the small screen, instantly deletes it with dull irritation. Wrong angle, wrong lighting, wrong composition. Everything completely wrong. Nothing looks right or alive anymore through the cold glass lens. The majestic mountain landscape that initially drew her here with its harsh, pristine beauty now seems depressingly flat, lifeless, empty. Eliza sets down the expensive camera with a dull thud and wearily looks out the wide window. The snow has settled in a thick, gleaming blanket, patterned with countless tracks of various animals leading to and from the trees: deer, rabbits, foxes, She automatically, almost obsessively scans the familiar forest edge, desperately searching for even a glimpse of familiar silver fur. Nothing. Only endless whiteness and dark silhouettes of spruces. They won't come back, she tells herself firmly, almost harshly aloud. Just breathe and be. Move on with your life. They're wild animals. They've long since forgotten about you. Despite this reasonable, logical self-criticism, disappointment presses heavily, physically palpably, on her chest. When winter twilight slowly gives way to magnificent sunset, painting the snow in shades of pink gold, Eliza steps onto the creaky porch with a steaming mug of aromatic herbal tea. She watches as stars appear one by one on the vast, boundless mountain sky. First the brightest, then increasingly dim, until the firmament transforms into a diamond-studded dome. The cold evening air ruthlessly burns her lungs, but she sincerely welcomes this sharp sensation. At least it's something real that can be felt in this numb emptiness. Her wandering gaze suddenly catches barely noticeable movement at the far edge of the forest, a shadow among playing shadows. Eliza's heart instantly leaps to her throat, lodging there as a painful lump. Silver stands on the invisible boundary between forest and open clearing, his mighty body completely, absolutely motionless, a living statue of silver and moonlight. Only his mesmerizing eyes move, fixedly watching her with that same piercing perceptiveness that has haunted her dreams the last 3 nights. Silver, she says in a breaking whisper, barely daring to believe her own eyes. You came back. You really came back. The majestic wolf's ears instantly, sensitively perk up at the sound of her trembling voice. Eliza slowly, very slowly, sets the hot mug on the porch railing, afraid that any sudden, careless movement might irretrievably destroy this fragile, incredible moment. But Silver stubbornly remains at the safe forest edge, not approaching the cabin, but not retreating back into darkness either. His luxurious fur mesmerizingly gleams in the rapidly thickening purple twilight. You came back to me, she repeats a bit louder, her voice filled with reverent wonder and incredible joy. And in response to her words, Silver takes one decisive step forward. Just one. But it's everything. Chapter 8. A Voice from the Past. The sharp, piercing ring of the old rotary telephone echoes through the quiet cabin the next morning as Eliza methodically washes dishes after a modest breakfast. She slowly dries her wet hands with a worn kitchen towel, warily eyeing the massive black telephone apparatus hanging on the faded kitchen wall. I can't avoid them forever, she thinks, with a heavy sigh. And so, she resolutely crosses the small kitchen and lifts the heavy Bakelite receiver to her ear. Eliza! Finally! Her worried mother's familiar voice crackles through the receiver, distorted by static interference from the poor connection. Your father and I were starting to seriously worry. You haven't answered for a whole week. Don't worry so much, Mom. I'm absolutely fine. Eliza mechanically stretches the long, coiled telephone cord, allowing herself to look out the wide window where fresh morning snow gently covers the familiar clearing with a sparkling blanket. Silver isn't visible at the forest edge today, but he stayed late last night, patiently lying on her porch until the deep, starry night, simply present, guarding her sleep. Being fine and being truly healthy are completely different things, my dear girl. Her mother makes a meaningful pause, and Eliza hears in that pause a whole world of unspoken reproaches. It's been almost 7 months. The unspoken hangs heavily between them in tense silence. 7 infinitely long months since that nightmarish incident on the train. Against her will, vivid images flash through Eliza's mind. 3 men who persistently followed her between the cramped cars of the night train. One purposefully blocking her path forward, while the other 2 methodically cut off any path of retreat backward. Their words slid disgustingly, stickily. Vile hands roughly grabbed her coat, her shoulders. Eliza, sweetheart, are you still there? Her mother asks worriedly, her voice seeming to come from far away. No, not at all. Instead, she's back there in that cursed car, desperately looking through the train door window, pleadingly meeting the eyes of other indifferent passengers. All of them quickly, guiltily looked away. One well-dressed woman even demonstratively stood up and moved to an adjacent car, walking away from the problem. Eliza! She blinked sharply, forcibly returning herself to the present. Yes, Mom, I'm here, sorry. Your father wants to talk to you seriously. The receiver rustles, passing from one parent to another. Hey, kiddo, how's the work on your photographs coming? Is the gallery still interested? The strained, deliberate casualness in her father's tense tone makes Eliza painfully clench inside. Everything's fine, Dad, she answers wearily, wrapping the telephone cord around her trembling finger. Work's going slowly, but it's going. That's wonderful. Very good to hear. He makes an awkward pause. The gallery called again last week. They're still holding that prestigious spot for your spring solo exhibition. The curators are very interested. Eliza feels the walls of her carefully abandoned former life trying again, slowly, inexorably, to close around her, suffocating. I'm not going back there, Dad. Her voice sounds firmer than she expected. Not going back to the city at all. Never. Her father sighs heavily. Or just, not yet? Maybe after some time you'll change your mind? When the wounds heal? I don't know, Dad. I honestly don't know. She leans exhaustedly against the cold wall by the telephone, still carefully watching the familiar forest edge through the kitchen window. Sweetheart, listen to me. Her father tries to reach her gently but insistently. You can't hide forever in these wild mountains, in your late grandfather's cabin. This isn't a life for a young, talented woman. I'm not hiding, Eliza responds sharply, almost angrily, surprising herself with the flash of emotion. Then what exactly do you call voluntary solitude in an isolated hunting cabin, hundreds of miles from civilization? Genuine pain sounds in her father's voice. This isn't a full life, Eliza. It's just slow existence. The memory of that terrible evening on the train again painfully surfaces in the brightest flashes. How she finally, in absolute desperation, pulled the red emergency brake, activating the piercing alarm throughout the train. In the ensuing chaos and panic, she jumped out onto a small rural platform in the middle of absolute wilderness. Threw her last trembling coins into a crooked phone booth to call her parents in tears in the middle of the night. They came, picked her up, but never, not once, asked for details of what happened. Maybe it was too painful for them to hear, or too frightening to know the truth. You know, sweetheart, her father continues after a heavy pause, I've always respected your independence and strength of character. Always been proud of it. But now, this is unhealthy. Shutting yourself off so completely from the whole world, from all people. From all people? Eliza's laugh comes out shrill, almost hysterical. You mean the world where I desperately screamed for help while men roughly touched me, and an entire crowded train car suddenly found the floor incredibly interesting? That's the wonderful world you insistently want me to return to? A long, heavy silence follows, broken only by the crackling of the poor connection. Not all people are like those on the train, Eliza, her father finally says quietly, wearily. There are still good, decent people left in the world. No, Dad. She bitterly recalls the detective's indifferent face, bored, slightly impatient, as he monotonously explained why filing an official complaint would be difficult and unpromising. How absolutely everyone around so desperately rushed to move on quickly to pretend nothing serious had happened. The world isn't as cold and cruel as you think now in your grief, her father insists. It was cold enough precisely when it critically mattered. Eliza furiously, angrily wipes the treacherous tears she hadn't even noticed on her cheeks. No one helped me. No one even tried. I was completely alone. She hears her father's ragged, heavy breathing through the crackle of the telephone wire. So, you've decided to live in absolute solitude for the rest of your days because you can no longer trust people? He finally asks carefully. Is that your final plan for the future? Eliza pulls the cord tighter, tensely turning her whole body toward the window. Here, in the mountains, I expect nothing from anyone, she says quietly, but with absolute certainty. And therefore, I can't be disappointed. It's safe. And you plan to remain completely alone until the end of your life? Her father doesn't relent. No friends, no community, no close relationships, nothing but eternal snow and silent trees. And at that very moment, Eliza notices familiar movement at the forest edge. Her exhausted heart stops, then begins beating with doubled force as the familiar silver figure majestically emerges from behind the snow-covered trees. Silver confidently strides through the deep snow, his massive head held high and proud, his mesmerizing amber eyes fixed directly on the cabin, as if he knows exactly, unerringly, where she's standing right now. Despite everything, Eliza involuntarily smiles. The first genuine smile in many days. Maybe not completely alone. Not alone at all. What does that mean? Her father's voice sounds confused through the receiver. Eliza, is there someone with you there? Silver gracefully stops exactly in the middle of the snow-covered clearing, majestically sits in the deep snow, and patiently, motionlessly waits for her. Guards. Protects. Simply present. Let's just say, Dad, Eliza says gently, slowly unwrapping the telephone cord from her numb finger. I've found a special friend, one who won't betray. She carefully places the heavy receiver on the cradle before her father can ask the inevitable clarifying questions, and steps onto the porch, toward the one who waits. Chapter 9. The Ritual of Trust. A surprising pattern establishes itself, almost a ritual. Every 2 or 3 days, Silver unfailingly appears at the familiar forest edge around the same time, about noon when the winter sun reaches its zenith. Sometimes he stays just an hour, watching the cabin from afar. Sometimes he lingers until deep darkness, lying on the porch like a living guardian. But he always, absolutely always comes, without exception. By the second week of this strange dance, Eliza begins unconsciously planning her entire day based on his appearance. She carefully saves the best, most tender meat from her supplies, keeps her professional camera constantly ready by the window, starts nervously glancing at the old wall clock as the appointed time approaches. This is ridiculous and absurd, she sternly mutters to herself, checking the time yet again. He's a wild animal, not an invited dinner guest, not an old friend for a scheduled meeting. But at exactly 3:17 p.m., Silver, as if by magic, emerges from the thick forest shadows, and her exhausted heart predictably stops from something dangerously, recklessly close to pure joy. Today she resolutely takes out her professional camera with a telephoto lens. Silver no longer flinches or tenses when she carefully moves on the porch. He simply calmly sits on the sparkling snow about 6 meters from the porch steps, his mesmerizing amber eyes fixed on her as she methodically adjusts the complex lens. Hold that magnificent pose, she quietly asks, feeling the familiar excitement of the photo hunt returning for the first time in long months. The light is absolutely perfect right now. Simply perfect. Through the professional viewfinder, he transforms into a true work of art. His luxurious fur shining, shimmering like molten liquid silver in the bright afternoon winter sun. Eliza completely immerses herself in the familiar, healing rhythm of shooting, for a blessed moment completely forgetting that he's a dangerous predator. Simply seeing beauty. Pure, mesmerizing beauty. You're incredibly beautiful, she sincerely whispers, quickly reviewing the resulting stunning shots on the small screen. Simply breathtakingly beautiful. Silver slightly, almost playfully tilts his massive head to the side, as if carefully considering her admiring words. You really do understand me, don't you? She quietly asks, slowly lowering the heavy camera. Every word. You're not just listening to sounds, you understand meaning. Silver slowly, very slowly blinks his amber eyes. A deliberate, conscious gesture that in cats means trust and affection. This simple gesture sends a powerful shiver down her entire spine. Days fall into place, forming a new rhythm of life. In the mornings, Eliza works on her photography with renewed energy, shooting wintering birds playing in the snow, frozen waterfalls creating ice sculptures, morning fog spreading between the trees. In the afternoons, Silver often, almost always comes, her silver guardian. In the evenings, she carefully edits the resulting photographs or reads by the crackling fireplace, feeling his invisible presence even at a distance. She completely stops flinching at every nighttime rustle outside the window, stops sleeping with the loaded rifle beside her bed, finger on the safety. For the first time since that nightmarish evening on the train, the heavy, suffocating knot of anxiety in her chest begins to slowly but steadily unravel. On his 10th regular visit, Silver brings her an unusual gift, A completely perfect pine cone, large, symmetrical, pristine, which he carefully places on the bottom wooden step of the porch, like a precious offering. You, you brought this specifically for me? She asks in astonishment, carefully kneeling on the cold ground to closely examine the gift. Silver watches her reaction with extreme attention and obvious focus, his gaze impossibly focused. Thank you, she says quietly, sincerely, carefully hiding the precious cone in the deep pocket of her warm sweater like a priceless treasure. This, this means so much to me, more than you can know. That night, she reverently places the gifted cone on her bedside table, and from time to time before sleep, she tenderly touches it with trembling fingers, needing physical confirmation that all this is real, that these aren't just lonely fantasies of an isolated mind. The next day, a sudden, fierce snowfall strikes, heavy, dense, erasing all tracks and enveloping the entire forest in thick, white silence. She sincerely doesn't expect him today. The weather is too harsh even for a wolf. But, exactly at the usual time, as if obeying an invisible call, Silver appears. Frost has stuck in thick layers to his luxurious coat, and he slowly, with enormous effort, carves his way through the nearly impassable drifts. You came, she says in astonishment, smiling widely for the first time in many days. Even in this terrible blizzard, you really came. Wrapped tightly in her late grandfather's old warm coat, she watches mesmerized as he stubbornly makes his way through the hostile elements. His absolute determination to reach her, despite everything, awakens something deep and warm in her exhausted soul. Hope. She feels hope. You're completely frozen, she says worriedly, when he finally reaches the porch, breathing heavily from the effort. Come up here, on the porch, away from the cruel wind, please. To her profound astonishment and joy, he obediently does so. He gracefully climbs the steps and settles beside her favorite rocking chair on the sheltered porch, curling up. Now she's so close that she can clearly see the tiny ice crystals covering his thick fur. She can hear the measured, soothing rhythm of his deep breathing. Slowly giving him the opportunity to pull away at any moment, she carefully extends a trembling hand. He watches attentively, not blinking, but doesn't move. When her frozen fingers finally gently touch his silky fur, neither of them stirs. Time seems to stop. Silver slowly, trustingly, leans into her careful touch, making a quiet, contented sound deep in his chest. She continues to gently stroke him, carefully removing the melting snow from his thick fur. His mesmerizing eyes slowly half close in obvious pleasure. Calm, content, absolutely trusting. They sit together for almost a full hour in comfortable silence. Eliza in her late grandmother's old rocking chair, Silver beside her, their breathing synchronizing. Both silently watching the falling thick snow, creating a new, clean world. I never thought I could trust anyone again, she quietly admits, watching the dance of snowflakes. Not after that horror that happened. I was absolutely certain that trust had died in me forever. Silver's sensitive ear slightly turns in her direction, catching every word. I sincerely thought being completely alone was safer, easier. Her voice trembles with surging emotions. If I depend on no one, have no expectations, then no one can betray me, can't cause pain. Eliza takes a deep, trembling breath. But then you appeared, completely unexpectedly. Days become noticeably shorter with each week. Nights ever deeper and darker. Harsh December smoothly transitions into even crueler January, bringing with it piercing, merciless cold that penetrates to the very bones. Eliza carefully prepares for the long winter. More dry firewood, neatly stacked under the shed. More canned food in the pantry. More caution in every action. But Silver's regular, predictable visits give her something incredibly important: emotional support, an anchor in reality. She constantly tells him absolutely everything about her day, her wandering thoughts, deep memories of her former abandoned life in the big city. And he invariably listens to her with such absolute presence, such focused attention, that she feels she's truly being heard. Perhaps for the first time in her life, truly heard. This is complete madness, isn't it? She quietly whispers one evening, gently stroking his soft, warm fur. telling you what I would never ever tell even my closest people, even my former fiance. Maybe that's exactly why it's so easy. Because you can't judge, can't betray trust with words. And remarkably, the panic attacks completely stopped. The all-consuming fear slowly but surely subsided, retreated. For the first time in many infinitely long months, Eliza sleeps deeply and soundly, without nightmares, without waking in cold sweat. Just peaceful, healing sleep. Chapter 10. The Bear Returns. The moose appears like a mystical ghost through the thick morning fog, his massive, majestic silhouette dramatically backlit by the bright rays of the rising winter sun, creating an almost mystical picture. Eliza instantly freezes in place, her professional camera half raised to her tense eye. Her breath stops in the icy air and small clouds of vapor. This is it, that perfect shot I've been patiently waiting for several long weeks. Wild and absolutely pristine, perfect in every way. Slowly, trying not to make a single unnecessary sound, she carefully raises the heavy camera to her eye, adjusts the precise focus with frozen fingers that have almost lost sensitivity from the cruel cold. The shutter clicks quietly, almost inaudibly, a sound barely distinguishable in the morning silence. The majestic moose alertly twitches a large ear, but calmly continues grazing on the frozen undergrowth, searching for scarce winter food. Eliza carefully takes several more precious shots from different angles, then begins extremely cautiously circling the animal, seeking an even more advantageous angle. The morning light changes rapidly, the golden glow intensifying and deepening as the winter sun slowly rises higher above the snow-covered mountain peaks. If I could get just a bit closer, capture him against the perfect background of that snow-covered spruce. Over recent weeks, the wild forest has become a true refuge for her, a source of inspiration. Thanks to Silver's regular soothing visits, Eliza has become significantly bolder in her creative explorations of nature. She dares to venture further and further from the safe cabin, again fully trusting her professional photographer's instincts. The moose suddenly sharply raises his massive head, widely flaring his sensitive nostrils, catching some alarming scent on the changeable wind. Before Eliza can even react, he swiftly rushes through the thick undergrowth, disappearing between the trees with astonishing speed and agility for such a huge animal. Damn it, she quietly exhales, disappointedly lowering the heavy camera. Something really spooked him. Perhaps the animal caught her scent on the treacherous, changeable morning wind. Behind her, a thick branch suddenly cracks loudly under something's weight. Eliza instantly freezes, feeling an icy chill of primal fear run down her spine. Something big, something very big is right behind me. Slowly, very slowly, she turns around. 20 yards ahead, an enormous, massive brown bear menacingly rises on its powerful hind legs, towering above the ground like a living mountain. Its thick reddish-brown fur dramatically illuminated by the bright rays of morning sun, shimmering with shades of gold and copper. It heavily drops back onto all four paws with a dull, earth-shaking thud. The massive head sways from side to side, the sensitive nose sniffing the cold air. Oh, God. Oh, no. No, no, no. Eliza's heart pounds wildly, painfully in her constricted chest. It's absolutely enormous. At least 800 pounds of pure muscle and deadly fury. Under the thick winter fur, powerful predator muscles clearly ripple. Don't run. Under no circumstances run. Don't scream. Make yourself visually bigger. Slowly, very slowly back away. The long-ago wilderness survival course echoes in her panicking consciousness like a distant, distorted voice. "Hey, bear," she says hoarsely, in a breaking voice, trying with all her might to sound calm and confident. She slowly raises her hands above her head, trying to appear larger. "Hey, big guy, easy. I'm just leaving here. Slowly leaving. No threat to you." The she-bear stares directly into her eyes, takes one heavy, threatening step forward, shaking the frozen ground. Then a quiet, pitiful sob sounds somewhere very close. From behind a moss-covered fallen log, a tiny bear cub unexpectedly appears, no more than 20 pounds, with fluffy fur and huge, curious eyes. Eliza's stomach instantly clenches from terrible realization. Oh no, she's a mother protecting her cub. I accidentally ended up between the she-bear and her baby. I'm retreating immediately, she quickly whispers, carefully taking a small step back on the slippery snow. Look, I'm leaving. No threat to your little one, I promise. Just let me go. The she-bear menacingly snorts, a deep, vibrating warning sound that she physically feels as vibration in her own bones and teeth. This is the last warning before inevitable attack. Eliza continues to slowly, extremely carefully move backward, muttering soothing words, anything, everything, just to fill the frightening silence. But the enraged she-bear inexorably approaches, closing the dangerous distance with each of her retreating steps, mirrors each of her movements. Now only 10 yards separate them, maybe even less. The massive bear's head is lowered close to the ground, the classic pose before a deadly attack. She's definitely going to attack. Now! Please! Eliza desperately exhales, feeling panic completely flood her mind. Please don't! I don't want to harm your cub. I just want to leave here. Before the bear can respond to her plea, Eliza's frozen heel suddenly catches on a root hidden under the snow. She painfully stumbles, losing critical balance. The she-bear, sharply lightning fast, lunges forward, covering the distance with terrifying speed. Eliza instinctively spins and runs. God, help me, please. Sharp branches mercilessly scratch her face, leaving burning cuts. Heavy boots slip treacherously on the icy surface. Behind her, the deafening thunder of massive paws on the frozen ground, the wet stream of the predator's hot breath on her neck. She's catching me. God, she's almost caught up. Ahead looms a thick fallen log covered with slippery moss and ice. Eliza desperately jumps, but too slowly, too clumsily. Her foot painfully catches the sharp edge. She falls hard, very hard onto the solid, frozen ground. Blinding pain explodes in her ankle. Definitely a sprain, possibly a fracture. Absolutely useless for running. She desperately crawls forward on trembling elbows, clinging with bloodied fingers to the frozen ground, dragging her useless leg across the hard snow, but the predator's long, cold shadow falls over her inexorably. Eliza flips onto her back, instinctively preparing for the inevitable. The she-bear menacingly towers over her in hind legs, her hot breath issuing thick clouds of steam. Huge jaws are covered with dried blood from recent prey. Her deep, vibrating growl is physically felt in Eliza's teeth. Help! She desperately screams into the empty, indifferent forest, her voice echoing between the trees. Someone! Please! The same word she unsuccessfully screamed on that crowded train, desperately looking into the indifferent eyes of passengers who one by one turned away. As then, no one answers her cry for help. She's completely alone. The bear rises on its hind legs again, transforming into a living god of muscle, fury, and unstoppable force. This is it. The end. All this slow, painful healing. Agonizing learning to trust again thanks to Silver's unwavering presence in her life. And here, in the very end, she's still absolutely alone when it matters most. The bear heavily falls onto 4 paws, shaking the ground. It raises its huge, deadly paw, preparing to deliver the final killing blow. And no one comes to help. Chapter 11. Sacrifice and Transformation. Eliza looks directly into the eyes filled with primal fury of the massive she-bear. Time slows to agonizing slowness, each second stretching into eternity. So this is how it all ends, she thinks, with surprising calm. Not in the big city I desperately fled. Not in the comfort of predictable old age. But here, in the wilderness, where I sought refuge from human cruelty. The irony of the situation doesn't escape her even now. Fleeing human predators on the train, she meets her end at the claws of real forces of nature. The bear's hot breath billows in thick clouds in the icy air, deadly claws extended like sharpened daggers, ready to tear flesh. Eliza can't even scream for help anymore, her voice completely frozen in her constricted throat. Her entire body trembles absolutely uncontrollably, the damaged ankle completely, hopelessly useless. She sees how powerful muscles tense in the bear's huge shoulder as it prepares to deliver the mortal blow. Eliza instinctively closes her eyes, preparing for inevitable pain and darkness. And then across the entire snow-covered clearing, rings a sound she instantly, unmistakably recognizes. A growl. Primal, fierce, furious, and absolutely unmistakably recognizable. Silver. Eliza's eyes snap open just as a silver blur, lightning fast, flashes through the cold air, materializing from nowhere. Landing precisely between her and imminent death, Silver lands with a dull thud on the frozen ground, instantly assuming a fighting stance. Body pressed low to the ground, all the fur on his withers standing on end. Fangs bared in a deadly warning. He looks more terrifying, more wild, more dangerous than she has ever seen him. He stands over her as a protective shield, fearlessly meeting the enraged she-bear's gaze face to face. "Silver, no!" Eliza desperately screams, sudden panic for his life, completely eclipsing her own paralyzing fear of death. "Run! Please run! She'll kill you!" But he categorically doesn't run, doesn't retreat an inch. Instead, Silver responds to her furious growl with his own, low, vibrating, full of absolute determination to protect. He lightning-fast lunges forward, deftly biting the enraged she-bear's sensitive muzzle, drawing all her deadly attention exclusively to himself. The she-bear roars deafeningly and furiously strikes with her massive paw toward the daring wolf. Silver dodges with incredible supernatural speed and agility, rushes forward, sinks his sharp fangs into her thick leg, and instantly springs back, avoiding a retaliatory blow. The she-bear, with astonishing speed for her size, spins toward him, completely forgetting the defenseless woman on the ground. For a brief, deceptive moment, desperate hope flares. Silver's faster, much more agile. If he can distract her long enough, I can crawl away. We can both survive. Then, the she-bear strikes with terrifying, crushing force. Her enormous paw hits the target with brutal, absolute accuracy. Silver is thrown across the entire clearing with a disgusting, dull thud, his body helplessly spinning in the air. He crashes into a thick tree trunk with a terrible crunch and falls lifelessly into the deep snow. Doesn't move. Completely doesn't move. "Silver!" Eliza's heart-wrenching scream echoes through the silent forest, reverberating between the trees. The she-bear begins to slowly turn back toward her, but Eliza doesn't see her anymore, doesn't notice. She sees only Silver, broken, bleeding, possibly dead. Bright scarlet blood rapidly spreads in a wide pool across the pristine surface under his motionless body. Something fundamental breaks deep inside her in this moment. Something that was carefully protected and locked, after that night on the train, suddenly flies wide open. She moves without thinking about consequences, ignoring the blinding pain in her damaged ankle, dragging across the deep snow on trembling arms, ignoring the burning ache in her joints. She desperately reaches Silver. The she-bear menacingly snorts somewhere behind her, but she doesn't stop, doesn't look back. Nothing matters except reaching him. She reaches Silver, just at that critical moment when he weakly, with enormous effort, tries to rise on trembling, buckling legs. Thick blood abundantly soaks his luxurious silver fur, staining it an alarming dark burgundy. His amber eyes with tremendous difficulty meet her gaze, clouded with unbearable pain, but still burning with that incredible, inextinguishable wisdom and devotion. The she-bear menacingly looms over them both, her massive shadow completely blocking the winter sun. Eliza instinctively throws herself onto Silver with her entire body, protecting him with her fragile form. She categorically won't leave him, won't turn away, won't betray, as she was betrayed. "I'm with you," she passionately whispers directly into his bloodied fur, pressing her heart to his weakening heart. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise. We're together until the end." She squeezes her eyes shut, preparing for inevitable, crushing pain of the deadly blow. Instead, she suddenly hears a wolf howl, piercing and furious. Then another and another and another. The entire ancient forest suddenly fills with their powerful, harmonious voices. Eliza with difficulty raises her head, unable to believe. Aurora swiftly emerges from behind the snow-covered trees, her ghostly pale fur shining against the white snow, making her almost invisible. Behind her appears an enormous black wolf with numerous scars on his muzzle, clearly an experienced fighter who has survived many battles. Then, two large gray wolves. No, four gray, six, eight. An entire pack, no fewer than 10 majestic wolves, forms an expanding protective semicircle around Silver and Eliza. No, she realizes with sudden, stunning awareness. Not just around Silver, around both of them, protecting them as one. They came to save them both. The massive she-bear warily hesitates, her small eyes quickly assessing the changed, now dangerous situation. She menacingly rises on her hind legs, issuing a deafening roar of fury and warning, like a living wall of muscle and unstoppable force. The enormous black wolf, clearly the pack's alpha, responds with such a deep, vibrating growl that it literally shakes the frozen ground beneath them. The pack begins to move as a single, perfectly coordinated organism, circling, flanking the she-bear from both sides, forcing her to constantly turn, losing orientation, preventing her from focusing on one target. Aurora, lightning fast, rushes in, deftly scratches the she-bear's hind leg with her sharp fangs and instantly springs away, avoiding a retaliatory blow. Then two gray wolves attack simultaneously, one from each side, biting and immediately retreating. The black alpha remains menacingly motionless, like an unshakable guardian between the enraged bear and the defenseless Eliza and Silver. The she-bear desperately, furiously swings her massive paws in all directions, but each time misses. The wolves are too fast, too agile, too well coordinated. Her cub cries pitifully from behind the moss-covered log, piercingly, panikedly, demanding maternal protection. With a final deafening roar of fury and defeat, the she-bear sharply turns and swiftly rushes to her frightened cub. The wolves instantly, synchronously part, letting her through their formation without obstacles. The mother quickly grabs her cub in her powerful jaws and crashes through the thick bushes, disappearing into the dark depths of the forest. Gone. Completely gone. A ringing, deafening silence descends. Eliza remains lying on the cold snow, curled protectively around Silver, her entire body trembling with shock and delayed reaction to the experienced horror. Gasping, trying to catch her breath, Silver whimpers quietly, pitifully beneath her, his breathing shallow, intermittent, clearly painful. The wolves slowly, carefully approach, their movements full of respect and care. They form a tight, living barrier around them, protecting from any possible threat. The massive black alpha takes one confident step forward, lowers himself, and carefully sniffs Silver's serious wound, thoroughly assessing the damage. Then, he slowly raises his perceptive gaze to Eliza. In his ancient eyes reads deep awareness, the wisdom of ages, that which no ordinary wild animal should possess. "Please!" Eliza desperately, in a breaking whisper, begs, tears freely flowing down her dirty, bloodied cheeks. "Please help him. He saved my life. He's dying because of me. Please." Aurora gently, soothingly nudges her shoulder with her muzzle, making quiet, calming sounds. The pack slowly, ceremonially surrounds them even more tightly. Their warm bodies form a living wall, protecting from the piercing wind and cold. Silver continues to breathe, but his breathing becomes increasingly shallow, intermittent, weak. Bright scarlet blood continues to inexorably soak the white snow around, spreading in an alarming stain. Eliza gently strokes his bloodied head, muttering incoherent words of comfort and plea, desperately trying to keep him conscious. "Just breathe and be," she passionately tells Silver, repeating her mantra again and again like a spell. "Please just breathe and live. For me. Don't leave me alone." Her damaged ankle pulses with unbearable pain, but she completely ignores it. The cozy cabin seems located light years away, in an unreachable dimension. She physically can't move his heavy body, can't leave him here to die alone, absolutely can't do anything. She's completely, absolutely helpless. The wolves slowly, synchronously begin to howl in unison. Not wild, chaotic cries, but low, mesmerizing, harmonious singing. An ancient ritual she doesn't understand but feels with her entire soul. Melody, purpose, sacred magic. The sound envelops her from all sides, penetrating deep into the frozen ground, into her trembling bones, into her very beating heart. Silver stirs weakly under her protective arms. His clouded gaze, with enormous effort, meets her desperate gaze one last, infinitely long time. And everything around suddenly, dramatically changes. Silver's bloodied silver fur begins to strangely glow from within, with soft, unearthly light. The glow rapidly spreads across his entire massive body, like mystical fire racing across dry paper, consuming every particle. What? What's happening? Eliza whispers, eyes wide with horror and wonder. Silver is completely enveloped in this supernatural radiance. His body begins to barely noticeably change, transform. The wolves continue their hypnotic, mesmerizing singing, their voices intensifying and harmonizing. Moonlight seems to gather from the air around Silver, concentrating, absorbing his wounded body. Eliza instinctively covers her blinded eyes with a trembling hand. Her shocked mind desperately screams protests. This is a hallucination, head trauma, blood loss, hypothermia, shock. This can't be reality, but it feels incredibly, tangibly real. The mystical light continues to pulse around Silver rhythmically, a heartbeat, an ancient rhythm, precisely matching her own wildly beating heart. The wolves howl louder, their united voices shaking the very cold air around them. Then, everything suddenly, sharply stops. Absolute silence. The blinding light instantly contracts to a tiny point, then explodes outward in a blinding flash. A soundless but powerful wave of pure energy knocks Eliza off her feet, pressing her to the cold snow. The last thing she sees before complete impenetrable darkness engulfs her is Silver's body, dramatically changing right before her eyes, lengthening, transforming, flowing, becoming something completely, absolutely impossible, becoming human. Chapter 12. Awakening in a New World Antiseptic. The sharp chemical smell of medical facilities. This is the first thing Eliza slowly, painfully notices as consciousness gradually returns to her from deep darkness. The sharp clinical smell that can only be in a hospital, a mixture of disinfectants, sterility, and the barely perceptible smell of human suffering. Her eyelids feel incredibly, unbearably heavy as she struggles with enormous effort to open them. Bright fluorescent lamps overhead instantly send a sharp flash of blinding pain straight through her skull, making her wince painfully. "She's waking up," comes a familiar, worried voice from somewhere very close. Eliza struggles to blink, forcing her blurred vision to slowly focus on her surroundings. Her parents lean over the hospital bed, their exhausted faces distorted with deep anxiety and obvious relief. Her father's warm hand firmly, almost painfully envelops her cold palm. "Eliza?" her mother asks in a trembling, breaking voice, in which barely restrained tears are heard. "Sweetheart, can you hear me? Please say something." "What? Where am I?" Eliza croaks hoarsely, feeling her throat scratch like sandpaper. Each word comes with enormous effort. "In the hospital, dear," her father answers softly, his voice trembling with relief and residual fear. "You've been here for 2 whole days. The doctors diagnosed a concussion, severe hypothermia, and a badly sprained ankle. We were so frightened for you." Memories begin to slowly return in fragmented, chaotic pieces. The majestic moose in the morning fog, the enraged she-bear with her cub, Silver bravely leaping to her rescue, not thinking about his own life, bright scarlet blood spreading across the pristine snow, the protective circle of wolves, the impossible mystical light. Silver. "The ranger said it was a grizzly bear attack," her mother says carefully, choosing her words. "Is that really what happened, dear? Do you remember the details?" Eliza slowly tries to prop herself up on trembling elbows, wincing from the sharp pain spreading in waves through her battered body. "I was photographing a moose at dawn, and then a she-bear with a cub appeared completely unexpectedly," she says with difficulty, trying to organize the chaos of memories. I accidentally ended up between them. She, she attacked me. This is the absolute truth. But how to explain what incredibly happened next? A pack of wild wolves that came to her rescue, as if on command. The incredible mystical light that enveloped the dying Silver, his body dramatically transforming into someone completely different. The memory slips away like water through fingers, leaving only a vague sense of something fundamentally important. You're incredibly lucky to even be alive, her father says, his voice becoming hoarse from suppressed emotions. If that tourist hadn't accidentally found you unconscious in time, he doesn't finish the sentence. But the implication is completely clear. Eliza's heart instantly, painfully leaps to her throat. The monitor beside the bed betrays her sudden, sharp anxiety with quickening beeps. The wolves, she blurts out in a breaking voice, trying to raise herself higher. Did anyone see wolves there in the forest? A whole pack. One of them was wounded, seriously wounded, trying to protect me from the bear. I urgently need to know if he's all right. Her parents quickly exchange another eloquent glance, the kind that usually passes between people who sincerely think you've lost your mind or are delirious, but are too tactful and polite to say it directly to your face. Sweetheart, her mother begins gently, carefully patting her arm with a soothing gesture. The doctor warned us that confusion and hallucinations are completely normal with a severe concussion. Your brain went through serious trauma. You just need rest and time to recover. I'm absolutely not confused, Eliza insists, almost angrily, feeling desperation rise in her chest in a suffocating wave. There really were wolves. A whole pack. One of them was heavily wounded, possibly fatally, trying to protect me from the she-bear. I must know what happened to him. It's critically important. Her mother gently but firmly presses her back to the pillows. Shh, sweetheart. Don't worry so much. You need to conserve your strength and recover. In the sterile hospital room, heavy, awkward silence reigns, broken only by the monotonous, mechanical beeping of the heart monitor and the quiet hiss of an artificial ventilation apparatus somewhere in the corridor. Eliza's anxious thoughts constantly, obsessively return to the wolves. To Silver. Is he alive? Did he survive after that terrible bear blow? The vivid memory of his blood abundantly soaking the pure white snow makes her chest painfully clench with new sharp panic. She must know, must learn his fate. The doctors categorically say you can be safely discharged tomorrow morning, her father suggests carefully after a long pause, obviously trying to change the heavy topic. And your mother and I have already booked plane tickets back to Seattle for the day after tomorrow. Everything's organized. What? Eliza sharply, painfully raises her head, ignoring the flash of sharp pain. I never, not once, said I'd return to the city. This wasn't discussed. Her mother again carefully but insistently squeezes her cold hand in her warm palms. Eliza, sweetheart, please be sensible and reasonable, she says pleadingly. You simply can't return to that isolated cabin after everything that's happened. It's openly unsafe for a woman alone. Bears, wild animals. Your things are already completely packed. We've taken care of everything. Your mother personally went there yesterday, her father adds in a conciliatory tone, collected everything most necessary and valuable. The very thought that they unobstructed invaded her personal, sacred space, unceremoniously touched her things, arbitrarily made fateful decisions for her, evokes a powerful wave of righteous anger in Eliza. You had absolutely no right to do that without my permission, she snaps sharply, angrily. A loud, unexpected knock on the room door suddenly interrupts the beginning tense family quarrel. A man appears in the doorway, tall, no less than 6 feet 2 inches, solidly, athletically built, with broad shoulders and narrow hips, with quiet, restrained focus and inner strength that instantly, magnetically draws attention. He's wearing simple, unassuming clothes, faded blue jeans, a warm flannel shirt and red and black plaid, worn leather boots, but he carries himself with the absolute confidence of a man completely comfortable in his own skin. And his eyes, amber, strikingly bright, mesmerizing amber eyes. They're piercingly familiar, but Eliza can't quite understand from where exactly. I know these eyes. I definitely know them. The stranger seems to freeze in place at the sight of Eliza, looking at her with an expression of deep amazement, barely restrained hunger, something so primal and intense that her breath catches. Oh, her mother says, obviously surprised by his appearance. Eliza, dear, this is Damien. This is that very kind tourist who accidentally found you unconscious in the forest and called for help. He's been coming here every day, regularly checking how you're feeling. Such a caring young man. Damien. This name doesn't at all match the powerful, all-consuming feeling of deep recognition that suddenly overwhelms Eliza completely. She's never met this specific person in her life before. She's absolutely certain of that, and yet, something in him deeply, fundamentally resonates in the very depths of her shocked soul. Like a note, perfectly struck on an ancient tuning fork. Thank you so much, she says with sincere difficulty, unable to tear her mesmerized gaze from his piercing amber eyes. Thank you very much for finding me in time and saving my life. Damien silently nods, a slight, barely noticeable tilt of his head. This simple gesture evokes such a powerful, strong feeling of déjà vu in her that she suddenly feels dizzy and is forced to grab the bed rails. I've seen this before. Exactly this gesture. But where? When? Now, may I speak with her alone? Damien suddenly asks, his deep, velvety voice addressed to her parents. Just 1 minute. Please, it's important. Her mother looks obviously puzzled and concerned by this request. Dear, you really need full rest, and we haven't even finished discussing your move back. Could you bring me some water? Eliza quickly interrupts, desperately needing a moment alone with this mysterious stranger. And maybe something edible to eat? The hospital food is absolutely terrible, impossible to eat. I'll go get food from the cafeteria, her father offers, rising from the uncomfortable plastic chair. Actually, Eliza says firmly, in a tone that brooks no objection, I'd very much like you both to go, please, at least for a few minutes. I really need to talk with him alone. Her father instantly recognizes this decisive tone, the same one she invariably used in her rebellious teenage years, when she finally made an important decision. Come on, dear, he says gently to her mother, softly touching her elbow. Let's give them a few minutes of privacy. When the heavy door finally closes behind the worried parents, Eliza and Damien look at each other across the entire sterile hospital room. Tense silence stretches between them, filled with unspoken words. He doesn't make the slightest movement to physically approach her, and she's sincerely grateful for this provided personal space, for the opportunity to carefully examine him without the pressure of family presence. Listen, she begins decisively, then corrects herself uncertainly. Damien, I know this will sound absolutely strange and probably crazy, but when you found me unconscious in the forest, did you happen to see wolves there? A whole pack of wild wolves? A complex, ambiguous emotion flickers across his attractive face, but she can't quite decipher it. Wolves, he slowly and thoughtfully repeats in his deep, resonant voice, as if tasting the word. Yes, exactly wolves. Eliza insistently leans forward, despite the protesting pain in her ribs, desperate anxiety appearing in her voice. They bravely tried to help me, protect me from the she-bear. One specific wolf was very seriously wounded, possibly fatally, heroically defending me from her. Silver-gray luxurious fur, incredible amber eyes. I absolutely must know if he's all right now. Please tell me the truth. Damien's expression noticeably softens, becomes more open and warm. He slowly, carefully moves closer to her hospital bed. Up close, she notices a fresh, still pink scar running along his strong collarbone, barely visible above the collar of the flannel shirt, exactly where the she-bear struck Silver, exactly in that same place. There really was a heavily wounded wolf at that place, he says carefully, choosing each word. But he miraculously recovered and firmly stood on all four paws. He's absolutely fine now, I promise you. Eliza experiences such powerful, all-consuming relief that she's forced to close her eyes for a moment, feeling tears of gratitude burning under her eyelids. Did you really see him with your own eyes? She insistently whispers. Are you absolutely certain he's alive and well? I'm completely, absolutely certain, Damien says firmly, with such unwavering confidence in his deep voice that no doubts remain. Eliza's heart beats wildly, joyfully in her chest. The monitor beside the bed registers her strong excitement and relief with quickening sound signals. Damien gently, soothingly places his large, warm hand on her trembling shoulder. "Just breathe and be," he says quietly, almost intimately. Eliza's eyes instantly snap open wide in shock. This phrase, these exact words, my personal mantra. How, how did you know that phrase? She begins in a breaking whisper, staring intently, studyingly at the mysterious Damien. This sacred phrase hangs heavily in the sterile air between them, familiar to impossibility. His strong hand quickly, almost guiltily, pulls away from her shoulder. "It's just, that's what my late grandmother often used to say," he answers somewhat uncertainly, looking away. "Family wisdom, passed down through generations." But he looks at her with such incredible intensity that should seem intrusive or even frightening. But somehow doesn't seem that way at all. On the contrary, it feels right, safe, like coming home. He slowly, almost ceremonially, slightly, tilts his head to the side, carefully studying her. This characteristic gesture is so painfully, achingly familiar that Eliza involuntarily gasps from sudden realization. Silver. That's exactly how Silver tilted his head when he listened carefully to me. Do I know you?" She barely audibly whispers, unable to tear her mesmerized gaze from his piercing amber eyes. "Have we met before? I feel something." Before Damien can answer her direct question, the door suddenly bursts open. Her parents return, energetically carrying a bulky tray with hospital food and several bottles of mineral water. "Well then, Eliza," her mother says deliberately cheerfully, even too optimistically, "have you thought carefully about what we were seriously discussing? About immediately returning home to safe Seattle?" Eliza casts a quick, meaningful glance at the patiently standing Damien. His face is carefully, professionally neutral, but something deep in his mesmerizing amber eyes, a barely distinguishable sadness, quiet resignation before the inevitable, makes her heart painfully, agonizingly clench. "Thank you very much for everything," Damien says somewhat sharply, formally, already resolutely heading for the exit. "For what you did for me and my sister that night during the blizzard. It meant a lot, very much." "Sister? What sister?" He extends his large hand for a farewell handshake. Eliza, without the slightest hesitation, takes it, feeling how his skin is burningly, almost painfully warm against her cold palm. His grip is firm, confident, but simultaneously infinitely gentle. Damien once firmly, meaningfully squeezes her hand, his thumb gently running across her knuckles. Then slowly, as if with enormous internal effort, releases it. "I really must go," he says quietly, his deep voice sounding hoarse. "Rest well and recover, Eliza. Take care of yourself." "Wait, please!" she desperately calls, extending her hand, but he's already swiftly leaving. The heavy room door slams behind his broad back with a final click. "About returning home to Seattle," her mother insistently continues, as if nothing happened. "Mom, I really don't know," Eliza wearily interrupts, still staring intently at the closed door through which Damien just disappeared. A strange, inexplicable emptiness rapidly expands deep in her constricted chest. Something incredibly important just left my room. Something critically important. Something she can't quite clearly remember or formulate, but without which, as she instinctively feels with her entire being, she simply won't be able to fully live on. Chapter 13. The Return. Eliza, slowly, with difficulty, limps to the very edge of the creaky wooden porch of the cabin. Her damaged ankle still periodically aches with dull pain, but it's definitely healing, growing stronger each day. The full moon majestically floods the snow-covered clearing with soft silver light, bright enough to clearly cast long, whimsical shadows from the trees. "Where are you?" she quietly whispers into the absolute silence of the dark forest, peering into the familiar outlines. "Well, please come." 2 infinitely long days have passed since her return from the hospital. 2 agonizing days she's patiently sat on this porch every evening, pretending to photograph rare wintering birds, but actually desperately scanning for a familiar silver silhouette among the snow-covered trees. but he hasn't appeared. Not once. Maybe he won't come anymore. Maybe everything changed forever. Eliza remembers how her anxious mother methodically filled the heavy pauses with endless conversations about old mutual friends from the city, whom Eliza sincerely hasn't thought about for long months, trying to recreate connections with her former life, which seems to belong to a completely different person. I categorically won't leave here until I know for certain that you're all right, Eliza stubbornly whispers into the night silence, her breath forming small clouds of vapor in the icy air. Do you hear me, Silver? I won't abandon you. Her exhausted mother finally sleeps inside the cabin on the sofa, having completely succumbed to absolute exhaustion after several days of constant, anxious watching over her daughter. Something fundamental breaks deep inside Eliza in this quiet moment of solitude. The carefully constructed dam of restrained emotions that she'd maintained with such difficulty all this time suddenly cracks. Hot tears freely flow down her pale cheeks, almost instantly freezing in the piercing cold of the night air. Silver, she quietly calls into the void in a breaking voice, not caring that it looks like madness. Please, if you're somewhere out there, I desperately need to know you're okay, that you're alive and well. Long, agonizing minutes of absolute silence pass. Only the howl of cold wind in the tree branches. Eliza slowly, resignedly sinks onto the cold wooden porch steps. She pulls her knees to her trembling chest, completely ignoring the insistent protests of her still healing ankle. Cruel cold rapidly penetrates through several layers of warm clothing, but she stubbornly doesn't move from the spot, doesn't retreat to warmth. You were there for me when no one else was, she tells the empty, indifferent clearing, her voice trembling with surging emotions. You showed me through your patient presence that I can trust again, that not everyone betrays. Please, let me see you at least one more time. I'm begging. A shadow slowly separates from the thick, dark trees at the far edge. Eliza's breath instantly catches as that same familiar, beloved silver figure majestically emerges from the impenetrable darkness. He came. He really came back to me. Silver moves with measured, elegant grace through the deep snow, his massive head held high and proud, his mesmerizing amber eyes fixed directly, unwaveringly, on her tear-stained face, as if he knew exactly, unerringly, where she's sitting right now. You came back, she says in a breaking whisper, struggling to rise on unsteady legs despite the sharp protests of her damaged ankle. You really came back to me. I was so afraid I'd never see you again. Silver makes a quiet, low sound deep in his chest, something between joyful greeting and relief. He stares at her with that same incredible intensity that suddenly seems too meaningful, too conscious for an ordinary wild animal. Eliza carefully, critically studies him in the bright moonlight. Those eyes, that piercing, intelligent gaze, the depth of understanding that shouldn't exist in a beast. You're not just an ordinary wolf, are you, Silver? She quietly but firmly whispers, taking a careful step forward down the creaky steps. You never were. I've felt it from the very beginning. Silver's sensitive ears instantly perk up, alertly at the sound of her trembling voice. His piercing gaze remains absolutely motionless, focused exclusively on her. You've always understood me, haven't you? Eliza continues, her voice becoming more confident, firmer with each word. Every word I said to you all these weeks, every story I shared, every secret I entrusted, you understood absolutely everything. The majestic wolf slowly, almost ceremonially, tilts his massive head to the side in that characteristic familiar gesture of attentive listening. And in this crystal clear moment, bathed in cold moonlight, Eliza becomes absolutely, unshakably certain. Her suspicions, which have been gradually growing all these weeks, are completely confirmed. Come inside, please, she suddenly decisively says, quickly glancing at the cabin where her mother sleeps soundly on the sofa, completely exhausted. Please, I need to understand something. Something very important. Eliza slowly, carefully stands and resolutely heads toward the front door. Silver hesitates for a moment, then confidently follows her. His powerful paws step completely soundlessly on the wooden porch steps, making not a single sound. Eliza extremely carefully leads him directly into the cabin, trying not to wake her sleeping mother. Quietly, practically soundlessly, closes the heavy front door behind them. Her mother continues to sleep peacefully on the sofa, not even stirring, completely unaware of their quiet arrival. Eliza gestures toward her bedroom. Silver follows her with frightening, almost human understanding of the situation, absolutely soundlessly, gracefully stepping across the creaky wooden floor. Once in the relative safety of her room, Eliza closes the door as quietly as possible and slowly turns to face the majestic wolf. In the soft, warm light of the bedside lamp, Silver looks simultaneously, achingly familiar and completely mysterious. A creature she completely, unconditionally trusted for months, and at the same time, suddenly seems absolutely foreign. "You've been watching over me all this long time," she quietly says, "coming back day after day, week after week, when you could have gone anywhere, to your pack, been free." Silver slowly leans back on his powerful hind legs, not taking his mesmerized gaze from her tense face. "Why?" Eliza whispers, feeling tears fill her eyes again. "I desperately need to know why. Why did you risk so much for me?" For an endless moment, nothing happens. Absolute, ringing silence. Then Silver slowly, as if in a trance, raises his gaze to the wide window. There, where bright moonlight freely pours through the clean glass, drawing intricate silver patterns on the worn wooden floor, the air around him begins to strangely shimmer and shimmer, like summer heat distorting reality, rising from scorching asphalt. Eliza watches mesmerized, her heart pounding wildly in anticipation of a miracle, not from fear. This is happening. This is really, truly happening. Then, right before her eyes, Silver slowly begins to disappear. His physical form seems to dissolve in the moonlight. In his place, on his knees, appears a tall, strong, completely naked man. Only moonlight gently plays on his bare skin, emphasizing every line of muscle. Eliza's jaw literally drops in absolute shock. A wave of recognition washes over her like a physical, tangible blow. "Damien!" She barely audibly exhales, instinctively recoiling backward until her trembling legs touch the edge of the bed. But, but how is this possible? You were a wolf. And now you're human. The man from the hospital, her mysterious savior, standing before her, looking with those same mesmerizing amber eyes she knows so well, painfully well. Silver's eyes. The eyes of her faithful, devoted protector. "This is impossible. This simply can't be reality," she mutters, pressing her cold hand to her dry lips. "You were a wild wolf, and now you're standing before me as a man. A living, real man." She helplessly gestures toward him with a trembling hand. "But why didn't you tell me the truth earlier?" Eliza asks, desperately trying to connect the impossible, contradictory facts. "Nay, why didn't you appear before me in human form on that very first blizzard night? I almost refused to let you in. It would have been much simpler, safer. I simply physically couldn't take human form," Damien explains, his deep voice sounding hoarse, as if he's unaccustomed to human speech. He's still kneeling on the cold floor of her bedroom. "When you heroically saved me from the bear, risking your own life, that was the first time in the last 3 long years that I was able to regain my human form." Eliza stares at him intently, desperately trying to match the familiar wolf she unconditionally trusted for long weeks with this mysterious man from the hospital, who, as it suddenly turns out, is one and the same being. Silver's familiar mannerisms in Damien's powerful human body, the fresh pink scar on his shoulder, exactly where the she-bear struck the wolf, the way he characteristically tilts his head, listening carefully. "This is complete, absolute madness," she mutters weakly, feeling reality slipping away. Damien slowly, with obvious respect for her space, tilts his head to the side. This simple gesture is so familiar, so typical of Silver, that for a brief moment it completely distracts Eliza from the shocking fact, from the fact that she's completely alone in her small bedroom, with a fully naked, unfamiliar man. Her wandering gaze involuntarily slides below his attractive face, stops on broad, muscular shoulders, sculpted, relief chest with a light scattering of silver hair, the narrow trail descending to his flat stomach, and further, to, you're, you're completely naked, she finally blurts out, feeling treacherous heat of embarrassment rush to her cheeks. She sharply turns her embarrassed gaze to the safe ceiling. Damien calmly looks at his naked body, as if only now, for the first time realizing this obvious fact. Clothing doesn't transform with us. He shrugs his broad shoulders, completely indifferently, matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. Eliza instinctively rushes to her bed, grabs a warm wool blanket and holds it at arm's length, her stubborn gaze still directed at the ceiling. Please cover yourself. I'm begging. She feels a slight movement of air when the blanket is carefully pulled from her trembling fingers. After a few long seconds, she cautiously dares to look. Damien has wrapped the thick blanket around his narrow waist and strong thighs, though his muscular chest with the characteristic scar remains completely bare. The scar from the she-bear's deadly blow is clearly visible on his left shoulder, a pink line on tanned skin. It will completely heal in a few days, he notes, following the direction of her intent gaze. A light shade of quiet amusement sounds in his deep voice, despite the obvious tension of the situation. Just like Aurora's injury back then during the blizzard. Aurora, Eliza slowly repeats, and understanding suddenly illuminates her. The small wolf, the one I saved on the first night. You mentioned your sister in the hospital? Damien smiles warmly, the first genuine, open smile she sees on his face. And this smile completely transforms his stern features, making them incredibly attractive. My younger sister, whom you so heroically saved that blizzard night, he explains gently. She can also freely change her form, or at least she could until 3 years ago, before the curse. What exactly happened 3 years ago? Eliza quietly asks, slowly sinking onto the edge of the bed, unable to tear her mesmerized gaze from him. Damien's expression instantly darkens, becomes grim and closed. Some evil people learned about our existence, that we're not ordinary wolves. His powerful hands clench into fists, knuckles whitening from tension. They came to our lands with modern weapons and cruel traps, with the intention to destroy or capture. My father and 2 other pack members were cold-bloodedly killed that terrible night. Eliza instinctively covers her mouth with a trembling hand, her eyes filling with tears of sympathy. I'm so sorry. That's terrible. I was a new, inexperienced pack alpha, Damien continues, looking at his clenched fists. My main task, sacred duty, was to protect at any cost what remained of my family, my people, to prevent the tragedy from repeating. He raises his exhausted gaze, meeting her eyes. I was so angry at the whole world, so embittered toward people for their cruelty and betrayal. I firmly decided that people categorically cannot be trusted. Never. Under any circumstances. Eliza slowly nods, understanding all too well, painfully well, this all-consuming pain of betrayal and loss of faith. I heard about the existence of a certain mysterious person, Damien continues his story, an ancient mage who sometimes appears in our world, grants wishes to those who desperately need it, but always for a certain high price. Like a genie from the Aladdin story, Eliza quietly interjects, remembering the cartoon from childhood. Something similar, yes, Damien agrees. I searched for him for a long time across all lands, desperately wanting to protect my people by any available means. When I finally found him, he said he would grant my most cherished wish, but warned that the price would be very high. He insistently, even pleadingly, advised me to think carefully and not do it. Damien sighs heavily, deep regret reflected on his face. But I categorically didn't listen to the wise advice. I was too angry, too blinded by thirst for revenge and protection. He winces, clearly ashamed of his past choice. What exactly did you wish for then? Eliza carefully asks. Damien looks directly, honestly into her eyes. I passionately wished for my pack to become absolutely invisible, unnoticeable to all people, for us to be in complete safety from their betrayal, cruelty, and violence, for exactly as long as I deemed absolutely necessary for our survival. Eliza slowly nods, beginning to understand the logic of his desperate choice. And what was the price for such a powerful wish? She quietly asks. What I valued most then wasn't what I naively expected, Damien answers with a bitter, sad smile. Not what I was prepared to give. What exactly did the mage take from you? My absolute, unshakable certainty that people categorically cannot be trusted never and under no circumstances. Damien's gaze doesn't leave her eyes. My 100% conviction in their unchanging malice and betrayal. Eliza leans forward in puzzlement, trying to understand. I completely don't understand the connection. How does this even work? The wish was fulfilled by confining our entire pack to permanent wolf form, Damien patiently explains. In the form of ordinary wild wolves, we would never, ever be recognized as anything but animals. We became invisible as sentient beings, absolutely protected from human hunting for werewolves. He runs his hand through his thick graying hair, an obviously nervous gesture. But by taking as payment my complete, 100% distrust of all people without exception, the wise mage left a critically important vulnerability, a potential path for the ultimate destruction of the powerful spell. When you stopped believing that absolutely all people are dangerous and evil, Eliza slowly, understandingly says, when you found an exception to your rule, the spell began to break. Damien silently nods, confirming her guess. The exact words of the ancient spell were, impossible to detect by humans for exactly as long as you sincerely deem absolutely necessary for protection. His voice becomes quieter, more intimate. I naively thought then that it was forever, that I would never change my opinion about people. He takes a step closer, gripping the blanket tighter to his narrow waist. And then you appeared, completely unexpectedly. Me? Eliza whispers barely audibly, feeling her heart pounding wildly. Yes, exactly you. Damien's eyes darken, the amber color deepening and intensifying as his piercing gaze meets hers. Who else but you would open their door in the middle of the night to complete strangers? Wounded wolves in a terrible blizzard? He carefully approaches even closer, close enough that Eliza can physically feel the incredible warmth emanating from his bare, muscular chest. Who else would risk their own safety for dangerous wild predators? He continues quietly in a whisper. One of his large hands slowly rises, barely not touching her pale face. You couldn't have known for certain who we really were. I've always had good intuition about people and beings, Eliza whispers, feeling every precious centimeter between them. I think that's true, Damien agrees, finally gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her flushed face. Your intuition, your compassion saved us both, me and my younger sister Aurora. I'll never be able to express my boundless gratitude for what you did. Is that why you kept coming back to me? Eliza asks in a trembling voice. Out of a sense of duty? Out of gratitude for saving you? No, Damien answers firmly, slightly shaking his head. I came back again and again because I simply physically couldn't stay away from you. Couldn't force myself to leave and forget. Eliza remembers the long, quiet winter days with Silver by the warm fireplace. Her endless, one-sided conversations about everything. The comfort his silent but absolutely attentive presence brought. Now she understands with absolute clarity. She was talking all this time to this man standing before her. To Damien, who understood her every word, every emotion, every secret. Who through this knows her better, deeper than anyone else in her life. So what exactly finally broke the ancient curse, Marchi whispers, unable to tear her gaze from his amber eyes? What fundamentally changed in that moment? You, Damien answers simply, honestly. When the enraged she-bear attacked, and I was mortally wounded defending you. You, without the slightest hesitation, threw yourself directly onto me, covered me with your fragile body. Were ready to die to protect a wild wolf, to protect me. Eliza clearly remembers that critical moment. The absolute certainty that she cannot, simply physically cannot allow Silver to die alone, bleeding out on the cold snow. In that pivotal moment, I finally, irrevocably understood a deep truth. Damien continues, his voice trembling with emotion. Not all people are my enemies. Not all people can't be trusted. There are exceptions. There is you. I no longer needed to hide from everyone, without exception. His warm hand, with infinite tenderness, cups her pale cheek. The powerful curse instantly shattered, precisely because I sincerely no longer considered it absolutely necessary for our survival and safety. Damien's thumb, with incredible tenderness, slowly slides along the curve of her cheekbone, leaving a trail of warmth. Eliza instinctively leans into his gentle touch, her heart pounding loudly, wildly in her chest. She looks into those amber eyes that have watched her countless long winter nights with such devotion. In them now burns something new, deep, warmth that slowly but surely melts the last remnants of ice frozen deep inside her wounded soul. I think I fell hopelessly in love with you from that very moment when you, without thinking about your own safety, bandaged my sister's mangled leg, Damien quietly, sincerely confesses. His voice trembles slightly on the sacred word, love. Then why didn't you tell me the whole truth earlier? Eliza whispers, carefully touching the silver strands in his thick hair with trembling fingers. In the hospital, when I looked you straight in the eyes and asked, I felt something, some connection. But you just silently left, leaving me in complete ignorance. Because you're human, Eliza. Damien firmly, almost desperately embraces her narrow waist, pulling her closer despite the obvious warning in his serious tone. And life with werewolves for an ordinary human? It's incredibly dangerous, unpredictable, full of risks you don't even suspect. His broad forehead gently presses against her forehead. Their ragged breathing mixes in the tiny, intimate space between them. Life? Eliza pulls back slightly to clearly see his face. A light, slightly teasing smile plays on her pale lips. You're already thinking about loving me for your entire life? Isn't that a bit presumptuous, Mr. Werewolf? Damien doesn't respond with a return smile or joke at all. Instead, his face becomes incredibly serious, deep. His piercing eyes look at her with such searing intensity that her breath literally catches in her chest. I know absolutely for certain that I will never in my life love another woman as deeply as I love you, he says firmly, without a shadow of doubt. Each word sounds like a sacred, unbreakable vow. That's exactly why I left the hospital that day. Because if I'd allowed myself to stay near you even a minute longer, if something serious had happened between us, his strong hands grip her face from both sides more firmly, as if she's the most precious treasure. I know absolutely for certain that I'll never be able to let you go again, under any circumstances. These passionate words hang heavily in the warm air between them, simultaneously a declaration of love and a solemn promise for life. Eliza feels hot tears, not from grief or pain, but from all-consuming, overwhelming realization, fill her eyes to the brim. This amazing man, this incredible being who so patiently, silently supported her through the darkest, most desperate moments of her life, loves her with that same deep, ardent, absolute devotion she feels for him with all her heart. Eliza resolutely responds in the only way that makes sense in this moment. She closes the last distance between them and firmly presses her lips to his warm lips. The kiss is gentle at first, cautious, a whispered question finally receiving its long-awaited answer. But it quickly, rapidly grows into something much more insistent, passionate, desperate. His strong arms firmly embrace her, pressing her to his hot, bare chest with incredible strength and tenderness simultaneously. Eliza embraces his broad neck, her trembling fingers greedily intertwining with his thick hair. She presses against him with her entire body, until the last heavy walls around her wounded heart finally crumble to dust. When they finally part, both breathing heavily and flushed, Damien's eyes shine with wonder and boundless happiness. I've been waiting long, endless months for the opportunity to truly embrace you, he passionately whispers directly on her lips. And yet, it still feels completely unreal, like a beautiful dream. This is absolutely real, Eliza firmly assures him, gently running her palms along the strong lines of his shoulders, feeling every muscle. The most real thing that's happened to me in my entire life. For the first time since that nightmarish night on the crowded train, she feels completely comfortable in her own body, in this sacred place beside him. The all consuming fear that had been her constant, relentless companion for so long has completely been replaced by something incomparably warmer, brighter, more hopeful. A future stretching before her, unexpected, mysterious, and absolutely beautiful. Epilogue. A new pack. Outside the cabin, a long wolf howl rings out. Pure, joyful, triumphant in the frosty winter night. Eliza smiles widely, still pressed firmly to Damien's warm shoulder. Now she finally understands what this ancient sound actually means to the pack. It's not at all loneliness or longing as she naively thought before. It's a powerful song of deep belonging, a joyful hymn to family, a celebration of reunion. And she, Eliza, a human woman who fled from the cruelty of her world, has now unexpectedly, miraculously become part of this ancient magical pack. Both, she and Damien, once withdrew from the world, deeply wounded and absolutely distrustful. Both found incredible, healing solace in the most unexpected, impossible place, in each other. Eliza tenderly kisses Damien once more, long, deeply, promisingly. Outside the window, the pack continues to howl joyfully under the full moon, greeting them both, blessing their union, celebrating the impossible love between human and werewolf. A love that shattered an ancient curse and opened the path to a new future. The end. Thank you for reading this magical story about trust, healing, and incredible love that transcends all boundaries between worlds.